My first experience at the Kingdom Hall was the weirdest experience of my life.
I was followed into the restroom at Kingdom Hall. I know, it's hard to say.
They followed us.
They followed us out.
Never
the door.
had experienced it. They followed us out of the door while we walked out of the Kingdom Hall. We went to a Kingdom Hall for the first time to experience the religion of the Jehovah's Witnesses. And to start with, whenever we first pulled up into the parking lot, I was surprised to see so many cars there. There were probably about 60 or so people, and this was a Wednesday night service. Whenever we leave our car in the parking lot, first thing we noticed immediately was that there was 3 men wearing suits at the door waiting for us. Well, waiting for all the visitors to come in. And they kept saying, "Were you invited? Were you invited?" And then we was like, "No, we weren't invited."
Are we supposed to be?
Yeah, we were curious. Are we supposed to be invited to be able to come here? And they said, "No, this is public, but usually people are invited." And that's the first time I've ever been to a church or any religious setting that you're kind of supposed to be invited, or that at least you're usually invited.
You want to talk about the second question they kept asking too? Like everybody asked us?
Yeah. So after about the first 3 men, we were asked at least 3 times, "Were you invited? Were you invited? Were you invited?" No, every time, of course, because we weren't invited.
Yes.
We just saw it online, took the initiative to go. However, once we get inside the building, which is like a medium-sized hallway, which leads into the congregation or the sanctuary or whatever you call.
Where the seats are, you listen.
Yeah, where the seats are, you listen to the speaker.
Yep.
And it was kind of weird, like from the initial, beginning of the whole thing, whenever you first go in, and these guys are saying, "Were you invited?" That was weird to begin with. And then we get into the sanctuary, or whatever you want to call it, and then it was probably 8 or 10 men, all wearing suits, I will say. They are dressed nicely.
Yeah, very nicely, yeah.
And what were they asking?
Where do you live? All of them. It wasn't like, where are you from? It was, where do you live? Where you meet someone, shake their hand, where do you live? Every time. Yeah. Every single time.
And that felt like they were reading from a script, because they would start with, "Hi, my name's Bob. What's your name? Shake hand. Where do you live?" And then the next guy, "Hi, my name's John. Shake hand. Where do you live?"
All of them.
It felt like a script. It felt weird, and I wish I could say that was the weirdest they got for us this day.
No, it was quite the experience. Like, they start their what's it called? Preaching, I guess. Right?
Yeah, I don't know if you call it preaching, because they didn't really use the term preacher or pastor. So the service, or I don't know let's call it service. I don't know. I guess it's the best we can come up with.
They start their service by singing a song with everybody in the church. And since we had just been there and we were there for the experience, what I noticed was the main lyrics of the song was "Listen and obey and be blessed." Like, if you obey them, you'll be blessed. It kind of gave off weird vibes, like, at least in my head it did.
Yeah, and that was weird, but a step before that is, after we're done greeting these 10 or so men wearing suits, this one older gentleman that had introduced himself a few minutes earlier had asked us if we would like to sit with him, and then we decided we'd rather sit by ourselves, so we walked up past him and where he was sitting at, up to a row that we were the only 2 sitting in.
One of the front rows, so we get the real experience.
Yeah, one of the front rows where nobody else was sitting at, and then the older gentleman took it upon himself, uninvited, to come and sit directly beside of us, and I noticed the positioning that he took. So we were up here on these last 2 chairs in the row, close to the wall, or right next to the wall.
The inside of the
row. Yeah. And the older gentleman comes and sits right here, like right beside of us, almost feeling like he was blocking us in, maybe.
Keeping us there, basically. That's what it felt like, right?
Yes.
Yeah. And the whole vibe of the speaker, even the speaker kind of creeped me out personally. Like, I felt like he had a forced smile, during the entire service. Like, It was all about obeying, and he was just smiling through all of it, which I'm not saying smiling's a bad thing at all when it comes to that. But it didn't look like a natural smile. It sounds crazy, but it looked forced, like as much as possible. Like he was trying to look good in front of everybody. But as they sung "Listen and Obey" for like 3 minutes, which was just creepy, at least in my opinion.
Yeah, so they had several speakers throughout the night, but the main speaker, the lead speaker, I don't know exactly what you would call him, but he had this weird smile. Like he
Very
would
forced.
smile like this the whole time, and like, yeah, guys. Well, he didn't say that, but he'd be like, so we're gonna do this next, and we're gonna have this, and we're gonna do that, and the whole time he just had this smile, just like this. It's creepy, right?
It's
It's a little
forced.
creepy, yeah.
Forced.
The whole time, yeah. He'd read a verse from the Bible, yeah. Smile on his face. It looks creepy. It is creepy. It was creepy.
It was just wild. And they also had skits, which I've never seen in a church, which this is not a church, it's Kingdom Hall. But it's the same premise in my head, at least. They had skits where two members of the kingdom, I guess, came up and sat down with microphones so the entire church could hear it. Or kingdom, sorry. Could hear it. And they were talking about donations. And they did I'd say I mean, how long do you think? 8 to 10 minute skit about doing private donations, which was kind of weird to me because normal churches, at least the ones I've been to, they do the basket thing where they walk through the aisle with baskets and they collect donations. But this one was a lot about private donations, which was kind of strange to me in a way.
Yeah, but I mean, I could kind of see that in a positive light, maybe. You know, because instead of because you carry the basket or the plate around the whole congregation, the whole church, or Kingdom Hall in this situation, everybody can kind of see how much or how little, or if any, you're putting into that plate.
Yep.
So the private donations, I could see that maybe being a positive thing. However, there's not many positive things that we experienced here at this Kingdom Hall.
No.
Another positive thing that I could say potentially was that the lead speaker and the rest of the speakers seemed more engaged with the members than an average, like a Baptist or non-denominational setting, in terms of they had men wearing suits and they would carry around a microphone, like as a long stick,
Yeah.
and there's a microphone at the end of it, and then like the speaker would be up on the stage or the pulpit up there in the front of the Kingdom Hall.
Yeah.
And then somebody would raise their hand, and then the speaker would say, "All right, Sister Smith," or "Brother Smith."
Sister, brother,
and then
basis.
the men with the microphones would walk up to them, put the microphone up in their mouth, in front of their mouths.
Yeah,
and then
this close, by the way, right up against them, basically.
And then they would mention a Bible verse, and then think about what they thought about the Bible verse.
And they wanted everybody to hear it because of the microphone, obviously. Like another thing with it that I noticed too is when I went to their bathroom, they had speakers in the ceiling of the bathroom, which I've never seen before. It's like even if you went to the restroom, you had to listen to what they were talking about. It's like they didn't want you to miss anything. Which maybe I've went to poorer churches, or I'm gonna keep calling it a church even though it's not. It's Kingdom Hall. But maybe I went to poorer ones, but I've never seen that before. I don't know if that's normal for these bigger places, or maybe it is weird. I thought it was weird, personally.
Well, I know what isn't normal and what is weird for sure is what happened to you in the bathroom. Let's talk about that.
It's kind of hard, not to chuckle about it a little bit, because nothing happened, nothing serious. But we were in the middle of a service, and I really had to take a leak, and I got up, went to the restroom, and like I was just talking about the speakers and the ceiling, right? I was in there for maybe 2 minutes, and I was using the urinal. And the way that bathroom is structured is when you go in through the main door, it wraps this way. So if you come in the main door, you can't see the stall or the urinal, right? So you gotta walk in to look at the urinal. You gotta like be in the bathroom, right? So I'm using the urinal, and this older dude that's been sitting by the exit door since the start of the service opens the door. He comes in. He walks in there. He's not directly behind me, but he's like off to the side, kind of like how I am to him right now. And he's standing there like this in a suit, and he's just watching me as I'm using the urinal, like making sure I'm not doing anything weird. Which that was odd to me because I've never been watched at a urinal in a religious gathering place or a church or a kingdom. You know what I mean? Like, I've never heard of that before, and I've never seen that. Like, you know, it's weird whenever you're using the urinal, your back's turned to him, and like, let's say he's using the urinal right now. He's me. I'm the man behind him, like this, looking directly at him. You know what I mean? Like, that was just odd to me, at least in my experience. I've never experienced that. So, and whenever I was in the urinal, he was actually telling me about what were they doing?
They had done skits or a demonstration of how to talk to people and convince them to come to the Kingdom Hall. So the example that they used specifically here for the first time was in terms of the donations that we had just mentioned. So, you know, the donations, the offerings, it's not done publicly in front of the church, it's done privately. And then they mentioned how as a Jehovah Witness, you need to let a person that's interested in your religion express their concerns. Don't cut them off. So if somebody were to say something, well, I don't know about this, don't cut that individual off. Let that person speak their concerns so they feel heard. And then you say your piece as a Jehovah Witness. To me, that felt like some sort of a manipulation, potentially, because I've been to several churches, I've been to many services. I've spent probably 1,000 or more hours within a church setting or within a religious setting, and I have never, ever, not once until now, seen or heard of or experienced a literal demonstration or skit of how to talk to people to convince them to come to your religious setting. I've never seen that or anything like that. And that was, for me, mentally, that was the straw that broke the camel's back, because I wanted to leave the Kingdom Hall immediately, because that felt completely off, completely weird, and again, that's not the weirdest it got. Not the weirdest it got.
And whenever this was happening, I was in the restroom, and I could hear it on the speakers, but I wasn't paying attention to it. But for me, the straw that broke the camel's back was when I came back and I was sitting down listening to them. And they pull up the TV and talk about how 250 members got arrested, right? 11 years ago. 11. They put on camera this woman that was arrested 11 years ago, and she's been in jail for 11 years, guys, over a decade. And she just got out, and they're keeping an eye on her practically. Like, what church do you know that you were a part of a decade ago that would put you up on TV and showing your face and saying, yeah, they just got out and we can't get in contact with them, we want to get in contact with them? And that was over a decade ago. That was the weirdest thing I've ever seen, honestly. Like, just like think about it. 10 years ago, that's more than that's like going to high school for 2 years, plus 2 years on top of that. That amount of time has passed by, and they're keeping an eye on those people. To me, that was weird. That like really weirded me out, because I've never seen a church. Because, okay, don't get me wrong, I get looking in at members and making sure your members are okay and all that. 11 years though, like, I don't know, that just felt really, really weird to me.
And another thing, that because it does sound like we're trashing the Jehovah's Witness,
yeah, we're trying not
altogether, we're really not trying to do that. We're really trying to give an honest experience from someone that's been a Christian for a minute, and then from somebody that is not.
I'm not religious. God, don't burn me, okay? I'm sorry.
Yes, so we have two different perspectives, but we both seem to agree that this was creepy and weird as hell.
It was
Creepy.
odd. Yeah.
But it does sound like we're trashing them. We're not trying to. We're just being honest and
Hey.
telling you what we experienced.
Hey, the one upside I can say about Kingdom Hall is, you see this right here on top of my head, my hat?
The hat, yeah.
They never made me take my hat off, or my necklace, or my watch. Every church I've been into, I'm not allowed to wear a hat. I could wear a hat in there, which I was surprised about, because everyone was following like a dress code in there. Everybody had a suit and tie, or a really nice skirt for the ladies. But I was allowed to wear my hat. I mean, no one ever told me to take my hat off, ever.
Yeah, and that's the first religious environment I've been in that didn't require you to not wear a hat, which, you know, I give it kudos to them, I suppose. They're trying to be like more open and accepting and understanding, because some people just wear a hat. It's just part of their attire.
Exactly.
Like some people just wear a shirt, some people just wear a hat. Well, you know, you get what I mean, I'm sure. Some people, the hat is just part of their clothing, like you know, like his, yeah.
Like me, yeah.
Yeah, and another thing about the church is I noticed they had a lot of tablets inside, or the Kingdom Hall.
A lot of technology.
Yeah, they had a lot of technology. First off, they had tablets. It seemed like a solid maybe 30 or 40% of the members had tablets in place of an actual Bible, which I'm assuming that on the tablets they were scrolling through the Bible verses, which was, they were talking about Psalms and Proverbs. I'm assuming they were scrolling through the Bible is my guess. I didn't see for sure what they were scrolling through, but I noticed, you know, seemed like a lesser amount had an actual Bible in their hands as compared to having a tablet.
The old men that like sat beside us did have our Bible though.
Yeah, the old man that sat beside us had a Bible.
Hard copy Bible, no tablet. Yeah.
Yeah, and another thing, and this, I was at a point to where I was ready to walk out towards the end of this service. Another thing that threw me over the edge was they mentioned a governing body, because at the end or I don't know, towards the end of the service, I'm imagining it was, they had like a man that looked like he was like a news anchor doing a news report.
And it said JW.
Yeah, JW for Jehovah Witnesses, yes. And this was when he mentioned the woman that had been in prison for 11 years for her faith.
Yep.
And well, wait a minute, you mentioned a governing body of a religious environment. You have a governing body.
Yep.
Well, this governing body is the Watchtower. The Watchtower, first of all, is just a weird name for a religious setting. And second off, I did a little bit of research into the history of the Watchtower and the history of the Jehovah Witnesses, and I found out the Jehovah Witnesses did not exist until the 1870s. It was started by a man named Charles Taze Russell, somewhere around the 1870s. So Charles Taze Russell had read the Bible, and to oversimplify it, to make this fast, the Charles Taze Russell had read the Bible, and in himself, in his own mind, he had said that church traditions were wrong on some things, and then so he found a group of people that believed kind of the same thing he did, and Charles Taze Russell, along with this group of people, read through the Bible, and they decided their beliefs of this Bible.
Kind of translated it to their beliefs.
Yes, they read the Bible in a group, and they decided, okay, this is what this means. But the problem for me though is that this is the 1870s. We're not talking 33 AD, the 50 AD. We're not talking when Jesus was here, when the apostles were here. We're talking like 1800 years later.
Like 200 years ago from today.
Yeah, not even 200 whole years ago. Charles Taze Russell and a group of men come together and read the Bible and said, I think this means this. And then that's where the whole Jehovah Witnesses stem from. That's where the Watchtower stem from. And something that was different from other religious settings I've experienced, Jehovah's Witness, the Watchtower, is a magazine that they send out to their Kingdom Halls. To their members. And they also have some public editions that they can give out to the public people that aren't members of the Kingdom Halls.
Another thing I don't think we've touched on was, actually, did you talk about what happened when we left?
Yeah, so I was building up to this.
Were you? Okay.
So we are about an hour into the service, and all of this weird stuff is hitting me in the face. and I just didn't want to deal with it anymore.
He had had
Couldn't
enough.
handle. I had had enough. Campbell, straw broke the camel's back. 10 minutes earlier. I was ready to get out of there, so I get up. Well, I look over at him like, "You want to leave?" He says, "Yes."
And I said, "Whenever you want to."
Yeah.
And I followed him out. Yeah.
We stand up. We walked past the guy that was sitting right beside of us.
The old man.
Yeah, like this is exactly how we were sitting. He was here towards the wall.
Yeah, actually, the wall's
I
here.
was in the middle. The old man was sitting here.
Yep.
Well, I get up. I turn around. I say, "Excuse me." I step over his legs. He falls behind me.
Yep.
And then, of course, the whole congregation was staring at us when we were doing this.
Everyone's eyeballing us like hawks.
But that can be expected, I suppose.
Of course.
But what was not expected was whenever we walked to the exit door, which was the front door we all came in through, there were two men in suits sitting at that door, which I have never seen
like
a church
like
where
guards.
men had just staged up in front of the door during the service.
Yeah.
Well, we left. We walked out. And then one of the older men in suits that was sitting at the door had tried to follow me out and he was saying something like, "Where do you live?" Well, I just blast on by and, I just ignore him completely. But he stuck around and talked to him for a minute, and I'm interested to hear well, first off, they followed us.
They followed us out.
Never
the door.
had experienced it. They followed us out of the door while we walked out of the Kingdom Hall.
The old man that sat himself beside us uninvited had followed us out the door. And there was another older man, but not as old as the dude that sat beside us. I'd say the dude that sat beside us was probably in his late 50s, early 60s, you think? The one that sat beside us? And the other dude was in his 40s, okay? And I'm telling you that now because it's going to make sense in the story. So we walk out. He keeps blasting through, right? He ignores them. See, I'm not like that. When someone talks to me, I stop and I talk to them, no matter if I want to or not. And the 40-year-old gentleman, and they're both in suits, by the way, stops me and says, hey, and he goes, "Hey, I'm glad you came by." He shakes my hand, and I'm talking to him for a second, and then the older gentleman that sat beside me and him during the service, he comes up to me. He says, "Hey, first thing he says is, where do you live?" Which I didn't tell him exactly where I live, but I told him a town near it. I'm not going to say it on camera, obviously. He goes, "Okay, I'm from here, And then he hands me a card, okay? Which I've never been handed a card in church. Okay, never. Me personally, I've never been handed a card. He hands me a card, he writes his phone number on it and his name. And then he shakes my hand and goes, "Hey, why don't me and you meet later?" And I was like, all right, I'll just try and get the fuck away from this dude, you know what I mean? Like this dude has been around us since we came in. Like a bad smell is the best example I can get. We didn't invite the dude ever. He just followed us around from start to finish practically. And I was just trying to get away from him because he's weirding me the hell out. And this dude was already in the car, cranking it up, getting ready to leave. I'm trying to get away from this dude, which I do. And I get to the car, I take his card, I rip it off because I'm not interested in it. Because to me, the Kingdom Hall felt more of, I hate to say it, but it felt like a cult. It really did. The number one question: who invited you? Everybody wanted to know. Everybody wanted to know who invited us. Second most asked question: where do you live? It was, "Hi, my name's blank. Where do you live?" Or who invited you? We'd say nobody. We're just here to experience it. Then it was, "Okay, where do you live?" Every single time. Every time.
It's creepy.
Every single time. There wasn't a person in there that didn't start off with, "Hey, my name's blank. Who invited you?" Nobody. "Okay, where do you live?" That was every meeting or every greeting we had there. Every greeting.
Yeah, and I can say from my personal experience, when I go to a different church that I'm not used to being, most of the time, "What's your name?" And then, are you a member of this church? Have you been to a church like this before?
Yep.
How'd you hear about this church? Something along those lines relating to the church itself, or at least what do you do for work, or are you from the area? Not just
Who
explicitly,
invited
"Where do you live?"
Who invited you and where do you live? Never heard it before.
Where do you live?
Oh, yeah.
Where do you live?
Let's give them the experience.
Where do you live?
You're shaking my hand.
Hey, I'm Bob.
Where do you live?
Where do you live?
Where do you live at?
Where do you live?
Where you from?
Were you invited?
Yeah, who
Where
invited
do you
you?
live?
Who invited you?
Where do you live? Don't run away. Don't exit off this video.
No,
Where do you
come here,
live?
come here. Where do you live?
Where do you
Where do you
live?
live?
Where do you live?
Where do you live at?
That's what it was like
Yeah.
at the Kingdom Hall, guys.
But imagine like 5 dudes around you, all doing that.
Yeah.
Like, all in suits. I don't know. It was
Yeah,
weird.
I gotta say, they were dressed nice. They take their religion seriously. They take the Kingdom Hall seriously. They were dressed nice. Every male I saw was wearing a suit.
Yeah.
And the women wearing dresses, except for us. The men, I mean. Except for, we were the only ones not wearing...
I was wearing something like this.
Yeah, and I was wearing a black jacket and black pants.
Yeah.
Not the nicest, but not, whatever. But everybody was dressed pretty nicely except for the visitors.
Of course.
And, first, everybody there was like in their 40s or above. They look older.
Yeah. Nobody was our age there.
Yeah,
Like,
nobody was our age.
Like you said, everyone was like 40 and up.
Yeah.
And there was no in between. Like,
Mm-hmm.
me and him are both in our 20s. And I saw nobody. The youngest person I saw there was a member's kid. Which I have, no idea how old that kid is.
Little kid.
But,
Yeah. Little, yeah.
Yeah, like 7, 8, if I had to say. That was the youngest member besides us. But if you don't count the kid, then we were the 2 youngest guys there.
Yeah.
Which is crazy to think about.
We were the youngest people there by choice.
By choice, yeah.
But I gotta say, I hate to make it sound like we're trashing Jehovah Witnesses. We're trashing the Kingdom Hall. We're not trying to. This is just our honest opinion and perspectives from a Christian of other sorts, not Jehovah Witnesses.
And a non-religious,
non-religious person, period. We both agree this was creepy. It was weird. But I do gotta say, I am glad I went.
Same. Yeah.
I'm glad I went because I'm glad I experienced it for myself instead of letting other people tell me what it's like. Because I have heard that the Jehovah Witnesses are a legit cult.
Yeah.
I have heard that.
I've heard it too.
I experienced it a little bit and I can see it completely. I see it completely, dude. This was just beyond creepy for me.
It was a crazy experience. Like he said, I'm not ashamed I went. I'm glad I went for the experience.
Yes, absolutely.
But it really did feel like a cult. I'm not trying to bash anybody's religion. Like, if you're a Jehovah Witness and you're watching this, I'm sorry. Maybe I just had a really bad experience. Maybe we had a really bad experience.
Yeah.
But everything you were just told is a 100% true story. Which, obviously, we can't film in a kingdom, I guess. So, we have no videos to back it. But that was just the vibe and everything we dealt with for what was it, an hour?
It was an hour, yeah.
Hour 15.
Yeah, we had got there about 5 minutes before the service began. And then we left. As of 8:29 was out, I was in my car cranking it up. He was talking to the guys outside the front door.
Yep.
For me, 90% of the time, if you say something to me, I'm going to be respectful and talk with you. But in that setting, I felt like they were just so creepy. Where do you live? Where do you live? This was the vibe I was getting. Like, they were just wanting to find out as much information about me as possible. And it felt like I just need to get out of here because I don't want these guys following me home or something weird like that.
Exactly.
Like, if you ever played Resident Evil 4, what went through our minds, we joked about this,
We did.
was Lord Sadler from Resident Evil 4.
Yeah, because his whole thing in Resident Evil 4 is obey, right?
Yeah.
And their opening song is listen and obey, which, hey, I'm not judging, but at the same time I am, okay?
Yeah.
I don't bash no religion. I'm not religious. But I've never heard a church song, or I guess a kingdom song, ever start like that. Maybe that's normal in Kingdom Hall. Maybe. To me, that I don't know, that was just weird, in my opinion. That was odd.
And this was our first experience with the Kingdom Hall, our first experience with Jehovah Witnesses, and we're going to add in there our first experience with a cult.